Hello, Jennifer Jean here. Since I'm recording this on New Year's, I figured I'd talk about a poem with a year in the title. There are many, and many are very, very good. Here are three I didn't choose, actually. I wanted to share those with you as well as the one that I did happen to choose. So some of my favorites include 1994 by Lucille Clifton. If you've watched my videos before, you know I'm a huge, huge Clifton fan, as well as 1/1/2000. So I guess that's January 1st, 2000 by Phil Levine. That poem shocked me and was so amazing. I need actually a little more time with it before I could delve into it like I usually do on these kinds of videos. So maybe at a later date. And also Why I Stayed 1997 to 2001 by Brenda Shaughnessy. All of those, and then, as I said, many more with years in the title are very, very good. What I ended up deciding to talk about was 1938 by J. Patrick Lewis, a poet that I'm unfamiliar with. He's actually largely known as a children's poet laureate, I believe, of Indiana. Um, and he lives in Indiana. He's just a poet, not born in 1938, actually. I checked that out. He was born in 1942. So he's been working for a while, but not as long as maybe that the year of the poem would suggest. Yeah, and this poem was really intriguing and I thought could give rise to a very interesting beginning of the year writing prompt. So let's take a look at his poem. Okay, here it is. Read it together with me. 1938. Superman flies onto his first comic book. Oil bubbles up in Saudi Arabia. Orson Welles's The War of the Worlds invades every panicked radio along the eastern seaboard. The Spanish Civil War rages on. Filming starts on The Wizard of Oz. At New York City's Carnegie Hall, John Hammond's Spirituals to Swing concert explodes with African chants. The Count Basie Band, Boogie Woogie, New Orleans jazz, hot gospel, stride piano, harmonica instrumentals, Big Bill Brunzi's blues. The audience hears the ghost of Robert Johnson, 4 months gone, easing out of a Victrola phonograph at center stage, the entire concert suddenly enveloped by the man who was not there. So I really love the rhythms in this. It's not surprising that it would have excellent rhythms given the bulk of the poem being devoted to music, actually, that the just, yeah, not even half, over half, I would say 2/3 of the poem devoted to musical things going on in 1938. And I have to say, Mr. Lewis, you've got great musical taste. I loved everything that he focused on in this musical portion. But actually, what I want to go over in this is the fact that he leaves out so much that was going on in 1938, and to also look at what he leaves in. And I can't remember if I mentioned this in my intro, but I actually did not quite understand fully this poem. I feel like I need to spend more time with it, but I wanted, as I said, to talk about it and talk about a prompt that could very well come from this because I think it's great in the beginning of the year. But yeah, I don't have to understand every poem that I find intriguing. I don't have to understand it right away. I could just spend more time. So that's fine. But let's take a look for the purposes of getting to our beginning of the year prompt. So he starts off with this highlighted section, Superman. That's his first thing going on. What's interesting is that Superman flies onto his first comic book. I mean, that's a superhero that's existing in 1938, and possibly his commentary is that at that time heroes were needed. Other things going on in 1938. I did a very non-academic thing and went on Wikipedia and just looked up 1938, and that's when the Nazis were marching across Europe. So there's a lot in invading the Eastern Bloc countries. So that's kind of interesting that he would mention this and not mention anything about what's going on with that. And I believe even Superman punched a Nazi in one of those first comic books that he was in at some point after, I don't know, in 1938 or when. I'd have to look that up, but I know that that was a theme going on. So that's kind of interesting. Also, most of this is referencing things going on in America. So he's an American poet, not surprising, but a few things do not. So the second line is one of those few things. Oil bubbles up in Saudi Arabia. So what's interesting about that is that that also is a sort of slant way to reference war that didn't, when the oil bubbled up, war didn't occur right away. But from then on, lots of war erupted out of a fight for the resource of oil. So that's interesting that he mentions it there. And then here's a war that is actually mentioned. It's a fictional war. And it wasn't just fictional, it was, you know, the mythos around Orson Welles' War of the Worlds invading every panic radio, etc., is that people actually believed it was real. So that's kind of interesting that this is the war that's mentioned first, because another war is mentioned right here. Spanish Civil War rages on. But what I find interesting about this real war being mentioned is that he did something that I love when it happens in poetry. On one line, some kind of factoid or scene or emotion or notion is brought up, and then what else is on it, and it's an enjambed line. Filming starts on The Wizard of Oz, so the clause is broken after filming start, right in the center of the clause. I'm getting excited here, so my articulation is a little off here, but yeah, filming starts usually be filming starts on, and then you'd break it for an end stop line. But he doesn't do that. He wants the Spanish Civil War to be on the same line as filming starts, because he's mentioning a lot of pop culture things happening in this year. That's what he focused on. I actually am not sure why. I have one theory, but I'm not even very attached to it, but I'll go into that later. But yeah, so the Spanish Civil War rages on and filming starts. So this is like, you know, we're entering the era when we can more and more film our wars. So that's kind of interesting. I think that that's why that real war is mentioned, and it's mentioned on the same line as filming starts, because it's a commentary on that. We're still in this realm of fakery in a way, because film is a lens. We're not there. We see it. We feel as if we're there very often when we see documentaries or documented real life events, but we are not. So that's kind of interesting, and that's a very it goes along with this reference of the Wizard of Oz, because that's the whole thing about the Wizard of Oz, is that what we see in front of us is not real. You know, the wizard with the big head and the lightning flashes, and it's really the man behind the curtain that's real. So that goes along with that little commentary. And then, as I said before, this whole section, starting with Carnegie Hall line all the way to the end, is all music. It's all like the whole year was filled with music. Now on that Wikipedia page, no, that's not everything that was going on in terms of history and important things and people who were born or died or whatever. But this is what he chose to focus on. And it was important to me to find out if he was born in that year. As I said, no, he was born in 1942. Why did he choose 1938? I don't know, maybe because so much important musical things happened that were important to him. So I think that this poem is more of commentary. There are many things going on here, but more of a commentary about the writer. Like, this is what was interesting to him. And we learn something about him that's unique just looking at the things he chose in this very short poem. It could have been much longer. 1938 was a big year in the world. We were very global. You know, World War II was going on. So, any case, he is, in a way, that last line. I mean, Robert Johnson is the man who was not there, but in a way, the author as well is literally the man who is not there, but feels very, uh, you know, these things resonate with the author somehow, and so we can know something about him, even though he was the man who was not there. I don't know if he's comparing himself. This is a long metaphor to Robert Johnson. I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that. You decide. You can read it. This poem can be easily found on the Poetry Foundation page, along with, as I said, so many great poems with a year in the title. Just type in 19 or 18 or 20, and you'll see all those poems. Okay, it's almost time for the writing prompt portion of this video. But before I get to that, if you're watching this on YouTube, please take time now to hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you as a subscriber to talk to you more about all things poetry. And as well, hit the notification bell that's below. In the description for this video, you can find links to my Patreon, which has all my content, all my video content there on Patreon. You can also find links to all my social media accounts, Twitter, Instagram, my website, if you want to know what I write. And also, if you're looking at this on Instagram, those links are also in my bio. All of my exclusive poetry and creative community related content, as I said, are available to patrons on my Patreon page. So definitely become a subscriber. I'd love to engage with you there on that page. Okay, so now time for the prompt. Before I say that, another before, you should know I constructed this prompt so that it may help you process your year. Hopefully, this is just one of many ways you're processing your year. A lot of people do journaling, or they chat with a group of friends. I've done that in the past. We just go around in a circle and talk about the things in our year, maybe the good things or things we would like to change in the upcoming year, or just talk very privately if you have a lot of really intense things to say and it can't be covered in sort of surface level talk. Talk with a loved one about your year, or I don't want to say or, I want to say and do this prompt as well. So here's the prompt. You are going to write a line of poetry for every month of 2020. So make each line as unique to you as possible. That is the key to this writing prompt. So we've been told that 2020 is wholly bad, and some people say it's the worst. And they say it that it's bad and the worst in very particular ways. But maybe you, and I don't even think it's maybe, I think definitely each person has experienced joys that are specific to you that happened this year. Also, you probably noticed, like I have, certain specific absurdities that you never heard talked about in the media or in your circle of friends and family. As well, probably your tragedies, because people have been experiencing quite a bit of tragedy. Your particular tragedies were not spoken of or written about in your, media or in your circle of friends or family. So write these kinds of unique things in those 12 lines so that your 2020 poem could only have been written by you. Next, you're going to have a draft, and you're going to take a look at the draft and decide whether you're going to think about structure. Okay, you're going to decide whether to leave the 12-line list as it is and revise from there and just have short or long 12 lines, 12-line poem, or if you're going to expand on a few of the topics and add some lines that go along with different things. Maybe you feel like you want to develop a few things. That's totally okay. Or maybe you don't want those lines. Maybe they ended up longer than you're comfortable with, and you can enjam those lines or just break them and stop if you want, so that still have that list of 12 things or scenes or topics, but the poem is longer than 12 lines. That's fine. The 12 lines are just a beginning, okay? It's just a leaping off point to begin, as I said, to process 2020 and create a very fabulous and extremely unique 2020 poem. So in your final revision, remember that you can alter your perspective towards any one of the items or scenes or things in your list. That's the goal for you in your, I don't think it's a final revision, but final revision for the prompt, the level of the prompt. So this is something I have actually talked a lot about in my videos, about altering perspective about things by looking at the poem as more of a container. I used to talk like this and teach this way when I taught my free to write poetry workshops for trauma survivors, when I taught in safe houses. Tell the survivors that a poem is a neutral container where you can put in it your notions, emotions, memories, dreams, potential solutions for things, regrets even. And when these things are in this neutral poem container, um, they're not fixed in place. They're not set in stone. They're malleable. You can move them around. You can change your perspective about these things so that each poet, this is what I would tell them, is empowered to change their perspective and then even in some ways alter what that thing or scene or item means to them for the rest of their life going forward. So I encourage you to do that as well. It's a great way to process this unique year. So if you've enjoyed this video, you can find more video segments like this, as I said, at my Jennifer Jean Writer Patreon page, which is a great resource for people like you who are doing the hard work of making your poems into their best selves. Look forward to engaging all again, and Happy New Year. Bye.